start the show. Don't be too hard, guys. All right, so Joe, this is...
Stop. Are you actually eating cheese? My name is Colby, like the cheese, and that's what I'll be talking about. Water boiler, all our snacks and fruit.
Got our recipe over here.
That's what you've been thinking.
Wow.
Well, everything light touches is yours.
Okay, I'm not angry. How dare you?
Oh, hey guys.
Hey, so
I'm here, everybody. I'm here. We can start the show. Don't be too hard, guys. All right, so Joe.
Stop. Are you actually eating cheese? My name is Colby, like the cheese, and that's what I'll be talking about. Water boiler, all our snacks and fruit.
Got our recipe over here.
That's what you've been thinking.
Wow.
Well, everything light touches is yours.
okay, I'm not angry. How dare you?
Oh, hey guys.
Hey, so
I'm here, everybody. I'm here. We can start the show. Don't be too hard, guys. All right, so Joe.
Stop. Are you actually eating cheese? My name is Colby, like the cheese, and that's what I'll be talking about. Water boiler, all our snacks and fruit.
Got our recipe over here.
That's what you've been thinking.
Wow.
Well, everything light touches is yours.
can start the show. Don't be too hard, guys. All right. So Joe.
Stop. Are you actually eating cheese? My name is Colby, like the cheese, and that's what I'll be talking about. Water boiler, all our snacks and fruit.
Got our recipe over here.
That's what you've been thinking.
Wow.
All everything light touches is yours.
Okay, I'm on English. How dare you?
Hey guys.
Hey, so
I'm here, everybody. I'm here. We can start the show. Don't be too hard, guys. All right. So Joe.
Stop. Are you actually eating cheese? My name is Colby, like the cheese, and that's what I'll be talking about. Water boiler, all our snacks and fruit.
Got our recipe over here.
That's what you've been thinking.
Wow.
All everything light touches is yours.
okay, I'm on English. How dare you?
Hey guys.
Hey, so
Hey, A2CN live, you know it's our favorite time. Turn it up and listen up and let's go take a dive. It's the show that does the most, and yes, we're streaming coast to coast. Bump it up and buckle up and let's go take a drive. Engaging the culture and spending our sense. Too many reasons we gotta speak in. 3 days heroes, you still relevant. For college students, ladies and gents, relating, connecting, reflecting, very thought-provoking. Acts to life, yeah that's right. A2CN live right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A2CN Live. We're your hosts. My name is Esther.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Steven. A2CN is an online Christian organization reaching college students everywhere. We're creating content and community for students to talk about God, the Bible, and life over the internet. We're exploring some of the hottest topics for college students and what God has to say about them. And today, we're going to tackle the question, isn't Christianity anti-intellectual? Because let's be honest, when it comes to being intellectual, smart, or academic, Christians and church, we don't have the best rep among people today.
Yeah, but before we get to answering that question, it's tardy time.
Tardy
Talks
time.
about random things. And today, Serena will be talking to us about sleep. For all of you watching out there, let's type in the chat how many hours of sleep you get on average each night. Take it away, Serena.
So the age-old question is back now that school is in session. How much sleep do we really need? Well, according to the University of Georgia Health Center, the average hours of sleep a college student should get is around 7 to 9 hours. You might be thinking, that's impossible. On college campuses, there is this stigma that if you do get the recommended amount of sleep, you're lazy or your workload is too light. People even pride themselves on how little they sleep. However, this is detrimental to our health. In fact, our immune system has a poor reaction to a lack of sleep. We have fewer antibody responses to the flu vaccine, and one study even shows that after participants went through a condition to sleep for 4 hours a night, their natural killer cells in their immune system decreased by 70%. And this decrease in natural killer cells is actually linked to cancer. You're probably thinking that this doesn't directly affect you. After all, we're still young and relatively healthy. Well, actually, one study was done on sleep and diabetes where 11 healthy adults went through 2 different conditions for 5 days. Sleep deprived, meaning they got 4 hours of sleep a night, or sleep rested. On day 6, their glucose tolerance was measured, and it turns out that in only 6 days, glucose tolerance of those who were sleep deprived was impaired by over 40% after sleep loss. This is significant enough to be considered pre-diabetic. Also, not sleeping to cram for some test doesn't actually help. That's because memory consolidation happens when we sleep. Sleep, specifically non-REM slow-wave sleep or deep sleep, actually stabilizes our declarative memory. What might help you study for a test is an odor cue. Exposing yourself to an odor when learning and also during slow-wave sleep enhances memory retrieval. So next time you need to cram, try using a scent diffuser when you study and sleep. And that's the TART for the day.
Wow, that TART reminds me of this diagram, this triangle. You can only choose 2 out of 3, unless you were like me and you were an architecture major, and in that case, you don't get to choose any of them, which is kind of sad. But this triangle very much accurately captures college life.
Yeah, blame the social life part on college.
Moving on, we'd like to introduce a new segment today. It's called Draw My Life. And it's a segment where we'll be featuring slightly deeper, thoughtful stories people have from their college years and the life lessons they learned from their experiences.
And today we're going to be hearing a story from Gloria called Rushing to Belong.
I was a typical pre-med student and joined multiple clubs to beef up my resume and volunteer experience. Sophomore year, I rushed a prestigious pre-health sorority for the connections, to belong, and to get an upper hand on the pre-med rat race. During rush, I made some small talk and acquaintances, thought I hit it off with some of the girls, but didn't get in. I was disappointed, but I got over it quickly. The next semester, I tried again. The girls recognized me, and again, I thought I jived with them and that they liked me. When I went in for my interview, though, it was such a different experience. No more smiles or small talk. I sat in a chair facing about 20 girls, and with each question they asked me, I felt evaluated and read into every change in their facial expressions. I was rejected again, and I cried because this time I felt crushed. It couldn't be a coincidence that they rejected me twice. There must be something wrong with me. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I also felt like this was somehow the end of my pre-med path, and this group of smart, pretty girls had ended it for me. Later that year, one of my friends decided to start another pre-med frat on our campus. She had also rushed a pre-health frat and had had a bad experience where she was initially accepted then later dropped. She wanted to start a group to create more opportunities for pre-health students, a group that wasn't so exclusive and actually focused on professional development and fostering relationships. I liked that and took up her offer to be part of the charter class. It was exciting in the beginning, trying to establish legitimacy on campus and recruit students to join, and it wasn't long before students came flocking. My junior year, I invited a sophomore that I recently befriended to rush for our frat, thinking it could be an opportunity to connect more with her. What I did instead was put her through the same process I went through, trying to connect with and stand out before us, going through an intimidating interview where we judged and evaluated her, and ultimately being rejected from our frat. Needless to say, things became a bit awkward between us after that. Though our frat did create more opportunities for pre-health students, their entry was still contingent on who we thought fit our group and vibe, or would be valuable contributing members. It wasn't about welcoming or accepting people, but building up our own elite exclusive group. It was fun being an insider, but eventually the cycle of rushing, pledging, and building up the group got old, and my relationships within the group remained stagnant and shallow. In college, everyone is looking for that group to belong to. That's just part of being human. We imagine and look for the ideal, inclusive, and welcoming group where everybody's accepted and happy. And we pay a lot of lip service to that. Sadly, one way people end up finding this sense of belonging is by creating exclusive groups like I did. And the reality is, I didn't find the sense of belonging through such groups. But eventually, I did elsewhere. One time I pulled an all-nighter, but still bombed my bio midterm. While I was feeling pretty down about this, I ran into my church mentor and small group friends who I hadn't seen in a while. We reconnected, and eventually, it was with this group of friends I was able to let my guard down and talk more about what was really going on in my life, like financial problems, difficulties with school, and much more. We were a hodgepodge group of 7 girls with different upbringings, majors, and cultures, but over the years, we developed deep friendships as we took our faith seriously and learned to care for one another. I learned that true belonging and friendship could only happen when I wasn't judging others on whether or not they fit some criteria to belong to my group. True belonging happens when you're part of a group of people who are willing to accept you as you are, and this is possible through the unconditional love of God.
Oh man, I can totally relate with Gloria's sentiment about her hodgepodge group of friends who had nothing in common. Like us.
Yeah, friends.
Friends.
Yeah, I mean, I think true belonging can happen when you no longer have to pretend to be someone you're not, and you can just be real before others.
Very well put, very well put. So moving on, the question we're tackling today is, again, isn't Christianity anti-intellectual? And like we said, this is a very common perception of Christianity. So why do people think this? Where is it coming from? And why do people have this perception? What do you guys think? Any ideas?
I think one is definitely the portrayal of Christians that we get on the media and on the internet. I mean, you'll always hear about these Christians that do or say these outlandish, outrageous things and openly proclaim their faith and about how it's God's will, how God told them to do it.
Yeah, they do it and it's like cringe, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
can you not do that, please? And it makes people kind of wonder, right? Like if that Christian actually believes the ridiculous things he's saying or believes what he's doing is actually commanded by God, there's no way that's an intelligent, rational person.
Yeah, and then that's actually a reason that Christians oftentimes get bagged on in internet circles, on social media. You know, there are a lot of memes like, you know, Christians are dumb, they don't believe in science, etc. But a lot of it is kind of setting up a straw man and then just being a bit condescending to it. But the thing is, when you hear someone constantly ridiculing something, you start to wonder whether or not it's true. And eventually you believe that they're onto something and that there's some truth to it.
Yeah, people will post images of ridiculous church signs like this one. The more educated we become, the farther we move away from God. I've heard if your faith is big enough, then facts don't count. Or turn off your brain and let the Spirit take over. Yeah. Actually, in 2008, there was a documentary called Religulous. It's a combination of religion and ridiculous with comedian Bill Maher. There's a part where he interviews Arkansas Senator Mark Pryor because during his campaign, you know, Mark Pryor talked really openly about his faith. And Bill Maher asks him about evolution. And Mark Pryor responds back saying, you know, I don't know how all that happened. And Bill Maher says, but it couldn't have possibly been Adam and Eve and the talking snake. You're a senator, you're one of the people who are really running this country, and it worries me that people are running my country who think and believe in a talking snake. And Mark Pryor says, well, you don't have to pass an IQ test to be in a Senate, though.
Bill Maher says that, not Mike Pryor. Because he wouldn't say that about himself.
He says that about himself. He does.
Oh, he says that about himself?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Painful.
Wow,
So
I remember that
painful.
documentary. It makes Christians look really dumb, really dumb. So, man, okay, but on a personal level, for you guys, personally speaking, what was it in your life experience that made you think Christianity was anti-intellectual?
Yeah, so I remember asking an older person at church, okay, so if God created us, then who created God? And the older person was so shocked and offended and told me that I couldn't ask those kinds of questions. I was taught that it was wrong to ask hard questions and that I just had to believe.
Wow, yeah, you know, unfortunately, that's a lot of people's experience of Christianity, of faith. That's what they think, you know, like I have this question, but I'm not allowed to ask it. I just have to blindly accept what I'm being taught, right? And man, that's a valid question, but that's really frustrating to hear. Yeah, Justin?
Yeah, I think for me it was just school, learning about a lot of things in school. I was kind of a naturalist in my worldview, actually. I believed in science, science rules, as the only way to describe the world and everything inside of the world. So, I thought nothing could refute the objective evidence, the data that was in front of me. So for me, there were a lot of questions I had about the supernatural things in the Bible, from the flooding in Genesis to the question of evolution to a lot of these miracles and wonders that happened in the New Testament. And so I wasn't sure if I could take a lot of these things seriously because they weren't things that I could reproduce in the lab.
Yeah, that's another really common perception, right? Like science is often seen as contradicting religion or it's at odds with religious belief, and man, those are some great questions. Those are some valid questions. But again, it just seems like Christianity is not the kind of thing that's welcome to questions, It's not welcome to that kind of intellectual investigation, right? So I think those are some great thoughts to start off our discussion. To continue the discussion, we're going to have another Cup of Joe, where I get Joe's take on a question. If you don't know who Joe is a friend of A2CN and a former lawyer turned college minister. And let's get his take.
Cup of Joe with your average Joe. Cup of Joe with Joe.
Hey, Joe. Hello. Welcome to A2CN.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I got to tell you that jingle is really growing on me. You know? Yeah. It says my name like 10 times. So.
Yeah, maybe too many times. All right. Well, the question we're talking about today is Christianity anti-intellectual? What's your take?
No. All right, we're done. Let's go home.
No. Let's go home. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a common view of Christians. And, let me tell you this story. I think it's a story you've heard before. It's often portrayed in media. There's this young person who grows up kind of in the countryside or somewhere, and then he's very devout, goes to church, believes in God, but as he grows older, as he takes science classes, as he moves on to college and learns more about the world, he can't hold on to his faith anymore. He has to make the brave choice to be guided by evidence and truth, and then converts to atheism. And I think this is the kind of story we hear often. It really feeds into this perception of Christianity as being anti-intellectual.
Yeah, I heard a lot of those stories too, and I heard a lot of people say that was their experience going to college, of their faith. They lost it in college. And there's kind of like two stereotypes embedded in that story. One is the simple, uneducated, surrounded by religious people, and that's why I'm Christian, that kind of stereotype, right? And then there's the I took science classes, I'm a reasoned individual, I'm educated, and so now I'm going to throw off the chains of tradition. And that's another stereotype. And those two stereotypical figures are often juxtaposed to each other, not just in like news or media, or it's just everywhere. It seems like that those stereotypes are everywhere.
Yeah, and so these are the stereotypes. Can we just all agree that stereotypes are often wrong?
Yeah,
okay,
not helpful.
I think that we're really wary about stereotyping people, but somehow when it comes to Christians, people feel just a lot more comfortable about just upholding these stereotypes.
Yeah.
So let's just consider the stereotype. I mean, is it even true? Is it really the case that Christians are not intellectual? And for someone who has that view, I think that person is really ignorant to a lot of history to actually believe that. Just there have been so many intellectual giants in so many different fields throughout history that were firm believers in God. In the area of politics, many of our founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, I'm not throwing away my shot. Yeah, that guy, right?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he actually had a sincere Christian faith.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Christian, civil rights leaders like William Wilberforce, who basically ended the slave trade in the British Empire, Martin Luther King Jr., all of his civil rights work for racial equality, that was all motivated by their faith in God. Giants in science, such as Galileo, surprisingly, Isaac Newton, they actually had a very firm faith and belief in God.
Wow. Wow. So those are a lot of historical examples, which are great. But are there any examples of modern people, people more recent intellectuals who are also Christian?
Yeah, the current director of the National Institute of Health, that job is actually considered by some to be the most prestigious job in science. and his name is Francis Collins. He's the guy who headed the Human Genome Project a few years back. He's actually Dr. Anthony Fauci's boss, yeah, and he is a devout Christian. And if you hear his story is the reverse of that typical, prototypical conversion story we talked about in the beginning. You know, he was someone who was an atheist going into grad school, but as he investigated, as he looked at the evidence, as he learned more, he became convinced of the truth of Christianity, and he converted. And he said that he was very profoundly influenced by the writings of C.S. Lewis, who coincidentally also was an atheist who was on a mission to discredit Christianity. And as he looked into the evidence, as he investigated further, he also became converted. And he has this great quote. He described himself as the most dejected and reluctant convert in all of England. But he ends up becoming one of the great intellectual Christian writers of the 20th century.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis, I mean, he wrote Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, you know, Mere Christianity, still classics, right? Okay, so I get it. The stereotypes of Christians being non-intellectual, non-scientific people, those are just plain wrong. If you look at history, modern times, so many examples of intellectual giants from the Christian tradition. And so that makes me wonder, like, is there something about Christianity where intellectualism actually thrives and it's not anti-intellectual?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a reason why so many of these intellectual giants emerged out of the Christian West. It's because the Christian understanding of the world, or what we often refer to as the worldview, the Christian worldview, it really encouraged study and discovery. It's because Christians, they believe that God was the one who created all of nature. And so, you know, it contrasts a lot with a lot of other religions who viewed nature as some sort of deity. So a lot of cultures, they like worship the sun, or, you know, there was some god of the moon or god of some sort of animal or something like that. But, you know, Christians had a very different understanding of the world. The sun, it's not a god. It's just a lamp hung there in the sky by God to give us light. There's nothing mystical or spiritual about it. And so you no longer have to like view it as an object of worship, but it's something you study, you look into, and you try to observe. And also the Christian view of God affected this as well, because Christians viewed God as being a God of order, and they viewed God as setting the laws of nature by which you know, nature ran. And so you know, you look at events in the world, you look at something like a hurricane, and the explanation isn't that, you know, it's some God who's acting really erratic or angry or something like that. And it encouraged people to actually look at what are the causes, what is causing this behavior.
Wow.
And so, you know, the intellectual, the scientific discoveries, they emerged from this Christian view of God and the world that he created. And this is why the Enlightenment, it happened in the Christian West and not in some other cultures. In fact, a lot of the most preeminent names of the Enlightenment, people like Isaac Newton, they were profoundly influenced by their faith. Isaac Newton, he actually spent more time studying theology than science.
Wow.
Yeah, and for all you college students out there, the university system itself is a gift from Christianity. The first universities in America, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, they were actually established by Christians to train up Christian ministers.
Wow. Yeah, man. So I can see clearly that because of the Christian worldview, you know, the Christian worldview is encouraging education and intellectual discovery. There's this rich intellectual tradition in it. And so then, like, why then are so many smart people today like atheists? You know, why are they so hostile to Christianity?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. But, you know, the reason is people are not completely guided by evidence and by reason. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into the mix of why people believe a certain thing or decide to follow a certain life philosophy. I mean, just because you're intelligent, it doesn't mean that you don't have biases or you don't have some sort of emotional baggage or you don't have some ulterior motives. I mean, we're all human. And frankly, a lot of people, they're not going to like the idea of a God who has authority over you, a God who is going to judge you, who is going to judge some of your actions as sinful or immoral. And actually, surprisingly, a lot of well-known atheists have candidly admitted that this was a huge factor in their beliefs. And so, one person is Aldous Huxley, who's famous for writing Brave New World. And he has this quote. For myself, as no doubt for most of my friends, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. There was one admirably simple method of confuting these people and justifying ourselves in our erotic revolt. We would deny that the world had any meaning whatsoever.
Wow.
And then similarly, Thomas Nagel, he's one of the most preeminent philosophers in America, and he writes this: I want atheism to be true and am made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be God. I don't want the universe to be like that. So there's a lot of reasons besides pure facts and evidence that go into people's views about Christianity. You know, whether it's Christianity or atheism, like neither of these can be proven 100%, like some sort of math theorem or something like that. There are people who are way smarter than you or me who believe in Christianity. There's really smart people who are atheists. And so it's not boiled down to a matter of intelligence.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so then, like, let's say I'm a typical college student, and I want to figure out whether or not this is true for myself. You know, I want to engage with Christianity intellectually. I want to grow in my faith intellectually. I want to see the reasons for why it is or isn't true. Where do I start? How do I do that?
Well, if you do want to investigate the evidence and look at the reasons, you're in luck because there are so many resources out there. Tons of books, tons of websites. I mean, things talking about like looking at the beginning of the universe to arguments from the fine-tuning of the laws of nature to philosophical arguments from morality, objective morality. There's also a lot of historical and archaeological evidence to support the Bible. Talking about all these, any one of these, it would take a long time. So obviously, we're not going to get into a lot of detail in any one of these arguments today on this show. But if you want a shortcut, if there's one thing you want to look at, my recommendation would be to look at the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. I mean, Christianity, it really does boil down to this issue. Is Jesus really God as he claimed? Now, if someone says they're God in the flesh, you don't have to take that all too seriously. Like I've heard people on the street say things like that. But if someone says they're God and they're going to prove it to you by dying and 3 days later rising from the dead, and they actually do that, well, I mean, that's some compelling evidence.
That'd be pretty good.
Right? And Christianity has actually banked the validity of the entire religion on this one issue. In fact, in the Bible, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul says, and if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain and your faith is in vain. Wow. So if you're looking for a place to start, I think that's as good a place as any. And one of my favorite resources on this issue is William Lane Craig. He's an expert in this field.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank you so much for your take. Let's have some coffee and hey, back to you guys.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Joe and Stephen. I really like how Joe talked about the resurrection because for me, investigating the claims and learning about the historical evidence behind the resurrection was what began to change my perception of Christianity. Joe mentioned 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 17 and 19. They say, and if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile and you are still in your sins. If in Christ we have hope in this life only, we are of all people most to be pitied. I didn't realize there was this kind of language in the Bible. Apostle Paul is literally saying, yeah, pity us if the resurrection didn't happen. In fact, the Bible invites you to grapple with these questions. And one thing that it showed me was that you can be an intellectual and Christian at the same time.
Yeah, actually, for me too, well, I guess my story, the first thing that made me reconsider the rationality of Christianity was meeting some of these like smart Christians. These were the educated people that parents want their children to be, the engineers, the lawyers, the doctors, only they were Christian. And when I met these people, I kind of expected them to be academically smart, lawyers and whatnot, but maybe philosophically illiterate. But that actually wasn't the case. They were better studied than I was, they were more quick-witted, and they were definitely more experienced than I was in almost all fields. At the same time, they were also knowledgeable about Christianity. They were able to answer my questions about the Bible and about the nature of the faith. And later on, I learned about some of those great Christian minds that Joe talked about, including Blaise Pascal, Leonhard Euler, Thomas Aquinas, and then some of the current thinkers like Francis Collins and William Lane Craig.
Speaking of William Lane Craig, he's the author of the book Reasonable Faith. It's a pretty hard read, but man, it's a great resource. It was written by someone who is very credentialed, and he talks about some of the most difficult questions about Christianity. Another book that really helped me was A Ready Defense by Josh McDowell. It's about twice the size, and it looks intimidating, but it's much easier to digest. And if you're curious, it's a really thorough book with in-depth responses to some of your doubts.
But if you can't read, like me, you can check out some of William Lane Craig's videos, which are much more bite-sized. The links are in the description, if you can read them. However, if you like to read, for whatever reason, but something a little thinner and a little more conversational is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. It makes a lot of arguments for Christianity that appeal to logic and common sense. That doesn't mean it's not captivating, though. It's enjoyable and definitely gets your brain juices flowing.
So to wrap things up, I just wanted to share that when I was a new Christian, I had a conversation with my atheist brother who asked me tons of questions that I just could not answer. But there was evidence. I just hadn't studied up on it. There are facts to back up Christianity, and there can be intellectually satisfying answers to your questions.
Yes, it's good to study up on apologetics, which is all about answering those types of tough questions. Not only to answer others' questions, but because it'll help you build a foundation for defending your own faith, especially when different doubts come around. And I think that's about all we have for today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of A2CN Live and our discussion on this question.
And lastly, we wanted to announce our upcoming nationwide virtual college retreat for all college students. It's called Rise 2020. Through this retreat, you'll get equipped and rejuvenated in your faith, and you'll get to meet more college students across the globe. We'll also have praise with Sanctus Real, For All Seasons, Local Sound, and other artists, and William Lane Craig, the guy with the 2 masters and 2 doctorates who wrote Reasonable Faith.
The big brain?
Yeah, the big brain. He'll be giving a workshop on the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. We have a video for Rise, so let's roll that.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
80% of the state is still under tight restrictions.
Colleges welcome students back. Some are already shutting down.
Overall, the campus, quiet and fairly empty.
It's easy for us to look at 2020 and call it a loss. This isn't the college experience we expected or wanted. But in this moment, we don't have to settle for just surviving. We can do what Christians throughout history have done. Turn to the gospel for strength. We can pray. We can band together and commit our lives to Jesus, trusting He wants to use us to bring hope to our world through the gospel. So this October, wherever you're at, come join friends and college students from around the country as we choose to start this school year by connecting with God, experiencing community, and reigniting God's vision for our lives and our generation.
Awesome. Well, the retreat is completely free, and who doesn't like free things? The link to the Rise website is in the description below to register. You'll need to register in advance to be placed into cohorts and receive pre-retreat packets. Even if you can't make it to every session, you're welcome to join as much as you can.
Now, I have some news for you all. Surprise, surprise. Today is actually the very last episode of A2CN Live Season 1. We will continue to produce different weekly content, including some of your favorite segments, and it will be available for you to view at your convenience on the A2CN YouTube channel. So don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, share, and follow our IG at A2CN to keep up with all of the stuff that we do in the future.
We hope you enjoyed spending your Friday nights with us over the past few weeks, and it was our pleasure to be your hosts.
Our pleasure. Definitely. Signing off, I'm Justin.
I'm Esther.
And I'm Steven. A2CN Live!
Goodbye, everyone! Woo! Yeah, party!